So that comes to what I want to talk about is again a little bit on the methodology of the practice. Um, by now, the practitioner in a normal progress of Kuo Lien Ying's teaching would have been 6 months into training by the time they get into line 6. Many times they would start off 1, 2, and 3 together, so the practitioner would have a bunch of stuff to work on, but then line 4 would come like a couple months later, and then line 5 would come maybe a month and a half later. So by the time you're doing line 6, you would have pretty much good background behind your foundation, both in the stance work, your endurance. If you're trying to rush through these lessons, it's kind of one after another, you're going to kind of bog down a little bit because when you get to line 6, maybe you didn't build up your ability to do the falling stance and your endurance. So those are things to keep in mind. Again, as we talked about in the last couple of lessons, you can do it stance work, slow, and in the slow stance work training, you won't get as winded. But if you're doing the flow training and explosive training and trying to do fast, then you can start to work on your endurance and your strength training. So all that up and down and all that kind of going back and forth really can kind of, you get a good workout out of it. So you have to kind of decide, am I working on the fundamentals of perfect posture and stance, or am I working on my endurance and trying to build up my stamina? Of course, you'd like to have perfect posture and stance while you're doing both, but sometimes you have to choose between one and the other. So it's a good idea before you start doing even just one line. What am I working on today? Am I working on my endurance, or am I working on stance? And you see a lot of practitioners, they go out and they just do the same line over and over and over, but they're not like consciously working on different aspects of it. I'm encouraging you to decide on the aspect that you're working on and work on it for a few times if you want, and then change the thing that you're working on. So every time that you do it, it's not just rote training where you kind of try to do it over and over, because if you repeat the mistakes over and over, you're just doing it wrong over and over. Each time you do it, decide, what am I working on specifically? For example, you don't have to do the whole line. I could work on just this, and then keep making sure that each time I'm doing it, I end up in a perfect posture. Or I could work on coming down off the bottom, coming to here. So every time that you do it, you're working on something specific that you decided. And that's the best way to train, not just to do it over and over. So again, you can do line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as endurance training. And again, by the time you get to 6, now with 6 being more difficult with it up and down, by the time you finish 6, you're going to be going, whoa, that was like a workout. But you can also do just 1, and then 1, and then take a break, 2, take a break, 2, 2, take a break, 3, so you can choose the way that you do your workout. You don't have to do it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over and over and over. And also, as I discussed earlier, if you do 1, by the time you get to line 6, you've done 1 a whole bunch of times, but you've done 5 minimally. So again, that whole idea of like doing backwards, maybe if you do like 4, 5, and 6 together, and then go back to do 1, 2, and 3, that's a good way to train, because you be sure to get your later practice enough to balance off your previous practice. So I'm just putting this out as methodologies, different ways that you can train. You shouldn't be locked into one training where you're just doing it over and over and over again and getting nowhere. So think about these things. And again, part of my teaching is not just to show the lines and teach the specific technique, but also to help people learn how to train more efficiently. I like Sifu De Mayo, my teacher that was a student of Bruce Lee. he had an excellent suggestion. You grade what you do. And I would have my students do that. I say, you're going to do your form, and each thing that you do, you're going to label with a 1 to 10 grade. And then I sit them down and say, okay, what did you think? And people tend to work on their strongest things first because it makes them feel good, and that's great because we want to be motivated to work. But sometimes you should kind of look at the weakest things and try to bring them up to the level of your strongest things. And so it's really good to label those as a grade and work on your weakest things over your strongest things, because you can do your strong things. And after you've been doing this for like as many years as I have, you can learn also when not to train as well as when to train. You don't have to train. There's kind of a misconception that runs through the Kung Fu world. 1 day misses 100 days back. In the beginning, I might agree with that, but after you've done it for as many years as, advanced practitioners, that concept kind of like isn't valid anymore, because you can go maybe a month without training a specific thing, and maybe your level will drop maybe 10%. And it only takes you 2 days to get back up that 10%. After a while, you learn so much that you can't train everything, so you have to make these decisions. And this is all part of the practice. So again, we're up to road 6, and you're going to have to start making some of these decisions about what you need to train the most. So that's my advice to you today. Line 7 is similar to 6. It's not super difficult, but it's pretty strenuous. And line 8 is very hard. It's very hard. So work on your falling stance a lot. Again, if you're older, careful about your hip flexors and your mobility. It's supposed to improve your mobility rather than destroy your hips. So just don't do it if it's starting to hurt or ache or anything like that. Just take care of what you're doing. Again, I'd rather you do it slow and stance training than over energetic and hurt yourself. So thank you.